One. Okay. Welcome to our third episode of Chronic Illness and Mental Health. And today I have Becca, who's going to tell us a little bit about her background.
Hi. All
Hi.
right.
So do you want to talk a little bit about like your diagnosis, how you got here, anything like that?
Sure. So it all started when I was 9. I got bit by a tick when I was playing at the park. And we were in upstate New York. And so there was ticks everywhere, but I had never been bit before, to my knowledge. And so I got bite. My parents didn't really do anything about it. We didn't think it was a big deal. And it just nothing happened for years until I was 14. And then all of a sudden I started having these crazy symptoms out of nowhere. We didn't know what was wrong. I was seeing so many doctors. And eventually I was diagnosed with chronic neurological Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella, all the good stuff.
Yep. All the good stuff.
Yeah. So right now though, so that was 14, and it took about 2 years of treatment for me to go into remission. I'm 24 now, so it's quite a long time ago. So I'm getting all of these things out of my brain.
Yeah.
So I've been in remission since I was 16, but I'm still dealing with all the after effects that comes with your body being completely ruined by Lyme disease.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so obviously this is a mental health episode. So you got it bit when you were 9 and then started affecting you when you were 14, right?
Yeah.
So before, that's pretty young. So like I kind of had the same experience with being young too. Did you have any mental health issues before it or no? Because I mean, it's a young age. You can at a young age, but no.
Yeah, surprisingly, no, I didn't.
Okay. So once you started experiencing everything at 14, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So did you notice any mental health changes at the beginning?
Right. Yeah. I think the first thing that happened was it was neurological, but it wasn't it didn't manifest psychiatrically until I went deeper into treatment. But I started showing depression and anxiety, not from the Lyme initially, but because of the circumstances that it put me in. For example, it caused a lot of bullying at school. I became isolated from going to school and events because I was so sick. I lost a lot of my friends. I had family just turn on us. So all these social aspects and even family, it was chaotic at home. All of those things affected me mentally first. And then, when you're in pain so much, you can't do so many things a lot of the time. At least I didn't know how to push through it then either. So I became very depressed and anxious then. But that was kind of how it started, more socially.
Okay, so it started kind of socially and situational and because of course when you're isolated and lonely, no one's going to be super happy, and usually you do develop depression and anxiety from that. But then it kind of developed into more from the treatment and the pain and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so from the beginning, how would you say it affected you? How were you feeling and what kind of moods were you in? Did you have any highs and lows for days or anything like that?
So in the beginning, I pretty much was just I got sad, and it really wasn't highs and lows. It just went downhill. It's always going more downhill. My dog just burst in the room.
It's a ghost. That's okay. My dog's in my room too.
So basically, I just went more and more downhill, and it was really depression first. And I hadn't ever really experienced anxiety, so I didn't know what it was. But I was very sad all the time. I would cry a lot. I didn't really want to do any of my hobbies anymore. I didn't want to get out of bed. Anxiety, as far as I was worrying about everything. I wouldn't want to go anywhere because I was so anxious, almost like a social anxiety. So that's kind of how it started. How I would feel.
Yeah. So did it continuously kind of go downhill over the years? Just
Yeah.
consistent?
So it started to get really bad when I was just doing antibiotics, like oral antibiotics. And then eventually I started going so downhill, like physically, that we needed to come up with a different treatment plan. So I did IV antibiotics. And that's when it really started to just like bring out everything. And
Yeah.
I had never experienced psychiatric symptoms the way that I was experiencing them. Like, I was like so depressed, crying constantly.
Yeah.
And that depression turned into like, I don't know if we need to put like trigger warnings or
Yeah, I usually like people know that
yeah.
it's gonna be, there will be triggers in these.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I started becoming like getting like hospitalized.
Mhm.
So I would have like hallucinations where I thought people were following me and people were gonna kill me and people wanted to kill me. I thought my dog wanted to like kill me and my sister wanted to kill me, like my own family members.
Yeah.
I was hearing voices, like these these things that were so crazy. I've never experienced them. And then I like with the depression, I just started to hate myself. I'm thinking like,
Mhm.
why did this happen to me? I hate myself. Like, I don't want to live.
Yeah.
So I was hospitalized, not once, but a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, I've been there too. It's not easy.
No, and it's even like more difficult because when I was going through treatment, like I had my PIC line, and so it was harder to find a psychiatric facility that also dealt with the physical aspects of it. Because like
Yeah.
they were comorbid, like they both affected each other. And to find like doctors that understood that was very rare.
Yeah. That's pretty much, you are stroke of luck if you find those places
Yeah.
at all. Being in the inpatient, how did you feel about it, since you know a lot of it's coming from Lyme and it's not like a normal what they usually see in there? It's like a different kind of a different case. Like it's kind of the same feelings and the same things, but it's not coming from what they're used to. So did you notice that people weren't listening or anything like that?
So the first place that I went to, I was freaked out. I did not know what was going on because I've never I was so sheltered from these experiences, like how other people, like things that affect kids normally, like, bullying, divorce, just
Yeah.
mental health, what they're used to. So I felt like I was singled out, and I
Mhm.
felt like I was kind of like almost separated from everybody else in a
Yeah.
way. And I just didn't, none of the nurses understood because everybody's like, well, why are you in here? Why are you in here? Everybody looked at me and they go, why are you in here? I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm like, I have Lyme disease. That's usually what I would say.
Yeah.
Like Lyme disease and I'm a little messed up in the brain.
Yeah. I mean, like it literally causes psychiatric disorders. So that is
Yeah.
that is the cause. And then they're saying things like divorce or school or things like that, but it's not that. Like it'll cause isolation and things like that, but the root cause is not what anyone's used to in there, I don't
Right.
think.
But I don't know. Like it depends. There was some facilities that were accommodating and that
That's
were
good.
actually very understanding. It usually was the ones linked to a hospital because they had, instead of like the ones that were separate, just
Yeah.
independent psychiatric facilities. And those seem to be the ones that were more understanding if they already had professionals. But it wasn't terribly bad. I felt like I was less judged in a way, which is terrible. But I don't know. Like I think they saw that I was just sick. Really,
Hmm.
they really saw that it was like I was just really, really, really sick, and I think a lot of them felt bad. But then there were just like, then there was the terrible doctors too. So
Yeah, it's hard to find them because they're used to dealing with psych. I remember I heard one psychiatrist say once, she was like, from our end, all we see is things like depression or anxiety or anything And I was like, well, kind of have to look at other ends because there's a lot of physical things that will cause that.
Right.
So I guess with that feeling, we could talk a little more about that of just being at such a low point, it sounds like. Right. Right. So how was it being at like just such a low point? Did you ever think you'd never get out of it, or did you feel stuck in it and just anything about it?
Yeah, I definitely felt like I was never gonna get out of it. I think the worst point that I was at was when I was in bed for like 22 hours a day, I'd say. I was sleeping for a good majority of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just constantly crying. I was loaded up on benzos, like, Xanax, Klonopin, Valium. I was like, in order to calm myself down, because I was such in a bad place and so much pain, I just literally was like, I remember staring at the ceiling for hours a day. I couldn't even hold my phone then. And I was just thinking, I want to die. I don't want to die. I'm never going to get out of this. This is never going to get better. It's not gotten better. And I really just thought it was the end and I would never, ever, ever get better.
Yeah.
It was a pretty dark place.
I think a lot of people feel that way. I mean, at least I've talked to people that do, and I have before. I've people on the Zoom every Sunday like talk about that, and it's just such a hard place to be in. That's like, how are you ever going to get out of it when you feel that low? Or if treatment's not working or anything like that, it's just like, how am I going to get out of it?
Exactly. And it was even worse because at the time, like, Facebook was popping and everything, and it was like in middle school, and like, I wanted to be with my friends and everything, and when I did go on my phone, all I did was sit on Facebook all day because I couldn't literally do anything else, and it would stare at everybody having fun, all my friends having fun without me, the friends that just like left me said bye, all hanging out with each other, everybody going on these trips and going away to places, and I was just sitting there in bed, like dying, and I'm like, I hate this. I really do.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to see, is like just watching everyone live their life and then you can't live your life. So what was kind of your thought process with seeing that, if like you were only going on your phone just to see that every day or whenever you could? What was that like for you to do that?
It was hard not to do it. Because it's like, okay, first of all, if you're laying in bed for 22 hours a day and you're completely bedbound, I mean, actually, I didn't even have a phone then. It was an iPod Touch. So I was that young.
It's close. I love those.
So it's like, I couldn't really read because it hurt my head. Like, I'm not going to sit there playing board games when I'm laying down. So I had an iPod Touch, and I'm like, so what else am I supposed to do? The TV, I don't know. I'd watched so much TV at that point, but I just was like, I almost became obsessed with trying to see how everybody else was doing, like, without me. And like, it became almost an obsession because it was horrible. I couldn't get my mind out of it. And now I realize how unhealthy it was, but it was what I did at the time to cope. Not really a coping strategy.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I actually really like that you brought that up, because I have never even thought to talk about that, because I've done the same thing where you just obsess over what everyone else is doing and what they're doing without you, and anything that you're not included in that you normally would be if you weren't in your situation. It becomes, I agree that it becomes an obsession. That's a really good word for it. I've never even thought to think of it that way. But then you saying that, I'm like, holy shit, like I've done that too. And I'm sure many other people have. And it's a vicious cycle.
No, it's not something I want to admit either.
Yeah, no. And I don't think a lot of people would want to, but I think people would now after hearing that. So how long did that last? Maybe like the obsession with just that vicious cycle of seeing what everyone else is doing?
A couple months, I'd say, when I was going through my worst and when I was like bedbound, until I was well enough to kind of get out and do my normal like my normal hobbies, like more low-key hobbies, anything that didn't involve like me laying in bed,
Yeah.
until I was able to get out of bed and do other things. It just kind of became like me being on my phone or my iPod all the time. So it lasted a couple months.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing to deal with, to just do nothing but be on your phone because you want to be living life, and it's just, that's not the situation right now. So when you were in that spot in life, did you ever have, like, were you suicidal at all or anything like that? As low as that, and just how was that feeling or any of that?
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
Literally every day. I just pretty much wanted to die.
Yeah.
And there was, gosh, there is a case where I wasn't walking. I was crawling around my house. Like I had a wheelchair, but it didn't go
Yeah.
upstairs. And so I was literally crawling around my house. And I was like in the kitchen, and my mom had turned her back for a second, and I was literally crawling around the kitchen like it's and
Yeah.
I remember like grabbing a knife, and I'm like I wanted to like literally stab myself, and my
Yeah.
mom turned around and grabbed it out of my hand and called the police,
Yeah.
and they knew us by name.
Yeah.
There was another time where I crawled out of bed, and it was like on the first story of the house. So I literally crawled out the window, and I don't know how, but my body just filled with adrenaline, and I started like crawling and like started to like limp
Yeah.
outside in my tick infested woods, like not in my right mind, clearly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I gonna do? I said, I'm gonna run away. Nobody loves me. Like nobody cares
Yeah.
about me. I'm gonna run away and just die somewhere in the forest. Like
Yeah.
it sounds horrible. And I'm like kind of nervously laughing now.
No, I do that too. I will laugh anytime I talk about something like that. I just laugh about it because I'm like, yeah, totally. I did that. You know, it's hard to talk about and bring up because it's just such an untalked isn't really a word, but it's not it's not a topic that's talked about enough. And I think, and then when we do talk about it, it feels like this such a weird, like strange, like feeling to talk about it, just because it's not a hugely open thing, but so many people deal with suicidal thoughts or attempts or anything related to anything suicidal at all.
And it's almost embarrassing too.
Yeah.
It's almost embarrassing for me because all my neighbors were involved in a lot of these things. Like they would come
Yeah.
over, like the fire trucks were there, and then they'd all come over, and I'm like, okay, like I was running around in the woods, and then everybody came out of their house to come and find me. And it was like I was the neighborhood joke.
Yeah.
Nobody, it was embarrassing. Like I literally wanted to take my life like every day, and I kept having incidents where I'd have to go to the hospital, but like everybody just acted like I was like, it was like the circus, like come on, let's go see the crazy girl.
Yeah, which is extremely annoying. And I get that too, because I've been in the hospitals for similar things, and it's like people just don't know how to handle it. And it is embarrassing. It feels like when they do find you somewhere or find you doing something or find you about to do something or just finding you in any way in that mindset, because you don't want anyone to see you that way either.
Right.
So like when they do find you, it's like uncomfortable. And I would say I felt embarrassed too. And it's a hard thing to just get past and to explain to them because they don't get it. And then they're like, well, why don't you want to live? Like your life is great, but it's not. It does not feel great.
Agree.
But that's what people kind of shove down your throat, I feel like too.
Yeah, and another part of like another aspect to it as far as the embarrassment is also the guilt. It's because it's like people make you feel guilty for feeling the way you're feeling, or they get mad at you.
Yeah.
I pretty much, my family was mad at me the entire process with my mental health. They were, hopefully they don't watch this, but they were not patient at all.
Yeah.
Not the slightest bit. And I understand that it's was probably very difficult, and no parent is really prepared for something like that. But every time I said like, oh, I want to hurt myself, or I don't want to live, I want to kill myself, like it was just like, well, why? What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do I mean? Like,
I
you
mean
know,
what I said. Like that's exactly it. And the guilt is hard too, because it's like they make you feel as if it is your fault, but it's not. Like obviously it's your mind, but it's not your fault that you're feeling that way.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
they'll be like, well, why would you do that to anyone? Blah blah blah. But then I always felt like it's like, well, why are you making me live like this? Like, why are you making me suffer like this? But they try to turn it around on you, I feel like, in a lot of situations.
Or they
And
say
it's
you're
like they can't understand. And they say what?
they say you're selfish.
Yeah,
Like,
that too. And then they make you feel selfish. And it's like, well, you're selfish for wanting me to stay here. And I feel like that's a pretty common feeling too. Because although they mean it maybe with like good intentions, they're not trying to be malicious. It's just like, can't you try to understand that this is a hard feeling to get out of? And
yeah,
like we shouldn't feel selfish for it.
yeah. I wish there was more resources back then for people to understand like the other coin of like Lyme disease caregivers. I wish there was more resources back then for people to
Yeah.
know, like how to deal with it.
Yeah. Because there was not at all. And even now there still isn't a ton.
Right.
And people just aren't prepared to, I feel like, get so sick and then have to lose everything they had. Because
Yeah.
who wouldn't become depressed or suicidal or anything like that when you lose what you knew? And now all of a sudden, you're not going down the path that your friends are. You're not going down the path that you want. You're not going to any like parties or anything like that in high school or college or anything. And it's just, I think more people should try to understand that it is very common to get super low and not want to live, because who wants to live like that?
Yeah. Nobody can prepare for that.
Yeah. I mean, you see, like, even in some states where they have the legal, like, put you to sleep thing, if you have a traumatic injury, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's kind of the same feeling. Like, yes, we can heal, but it's kind of the same feeling, I feel like, because they don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
And we don't want to live like that. So, of course, I think we should all live here, and I'm glad we all are for who is here. But it's like, it's that same feeling, I feel like, that they are feeling at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is hard to understand. But are you clearly, or maybe I'm wrong, but you seem to be out of that now, like a little bit at least.
Yeah. Mentally, yes. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things though that lagged on for a long time, and even past the Lyme never went away. I tried so many different medications for mental health, like different combinations, different doses. I think I tried about 20 different psychiatric medications, like a mix of all different kinds. Experimented since I was 14, and I was in that for years. I'm still like
Yeah.
on medication. But what was a game changer for me was they had told me, listen, your depression is medication resistant, and they think it was because of the Lyme
Yeah.
that I was never able to, like, it was just not working at
Yeah.
all.
So it's a different cause from what it's designed for.
Yeah, exactly. So I did what's called TMS therapy. It sounds freaky, but it's transcranial magnetic stimulation. That was what got me out of my depression after
Yeah.
10 years.
Wow. So what is that? Because I have no idea what that is.
So the easiest way to explain it is it's a magnet that stimulates the area in the front of your brain that has to do with like emotions and things like where depression really comes from. And so there's a magnet and it pulses for like 20 minutes. They put like a little helmet on you. You sit down, you watch TV, and they put like a little helmet on you. And this magnet just like pulses for 20 minutes. And every day it stimulates that part of your brain. And you do that for like 6 weeks, generally.
Yeah.
30 times is supposed to be the treatment course. And
Wow.
I don't fully know how it works, but it works. Like science, like I was so desperate. I got to a point where, like, I don't care. I'm gonna try anything. And it's not invasive. I didn't have like any side effects from it except for a headache the first day. But it's ultimately like what helped my depression. That was medication resistant from Lyme.
Oh, my mind's been blown by that because I didn't know what that was or that it even existed.
Crazy.
But that's really, really cool because I feel like a lot of people are medication resistant who are chronically ill with like Lyme and stuff and get mental health issues. And I feel like that might be a really good option for a lot of people to try too.
Yeah.
But that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool.
Was the insurance covered it. So it was just like a simple, say you go to just your basic doctor, whatever your copay is for that appointment is what they would charge me every day. So it was like nothing. And I was shocked. So like whatever your copay is times 30, that's generally what you're gonna pay for that treatment.
That's really cool. I think a lot of people should look into that because I've never heard it anywhere. So that is really, really cool. I might even look into it myself because that's cool. And I don't take medicine. I don't like the medicine, never worked. And I know a lot of people it hasn't worked for either. And it's probably for the same reason or at least very similar. And I think that could be really beneficial. That's cool. But with the mental health kind of lingering after Lyme, I think that's really important too, because I've gotten a lot of questions where people are like, I'm so scared that once I'm better physically or in remission, or doing a little better than I was, that I'm still going to feel like this. I'm still going to feel like this emotionally. I'm still going to have bad mental health. And I kind of think so too. Like, it seems like you did too, because it's a traumatic experience to go through and that just doesn't go away.
Yeah. So aside from the PTSD that usually happens with the Lyme, a lot of Lyme patients do get PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed with that, but everybody's different. I can't say it's going to stay. I can't say it's going to go away. With my experience, it did linger, even though my doctor said, you're in remission, but I was still struggling with everything else. Mm-hmm. But he thought that what my symptoms showed was that I was mainly in remission. And this was just going to kind of be something that was lingering, just like I had some physical symptoms that lingered that it wasn't Lyme at that point, but it was a result of it. So it's when you have late stage Lyme, unfortunately, I don't think many people are going to ever go back 100% to who they were. I think there's always going to be a little bit of something, just depends on so many factors. But what I can say is there's hope. It's not going to be terrible forever. But
I agree with that everyone's different too. And that maybe some people will get rid of the Lyme and they'll feel great mentally. But I feel like that's a pretty unrealistic expectation just because when you go through something like that, the experience and the feelings usually don't just go away. It might be different. Like for you, it seemed like it was a little different, maybe the way it was lingering from what it was at first. Yeah. So what was it like kind of once it was lingering after you were in remission?
So it definitely died down a lot. It wasn't as extreme.
Yeah.
I was still going to the psychiatrist, I'd say like once a month, once every 2 months, not as frequently, but it was more like maintenance for my mental health. And then occasionally, like every couple months, I'd go downhill again, whether it was anxiety or depression. and they would have to like adjust it, and that's always adjust the medication. That's always like transition period. But
Yeah.
every couple of months, it was just kind of like, highs and lows, and
Yeah.
but it wasn't like as extreme, as consistent. I also had the component though of being misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder because my Lyme disease was so intense.
Yeah.
Mind you, I was 15 when they diagnosed me with that. Usually they don't diagnose people with bipolar disorder before 18. It
Yeah.
happens, but they usually don't. I don't know what psychiatrists I was seeing. I was so young, I could barely advocate for myself.
Yeah.
But like my parents had everybody convinced that I had bipolar disorder, even though they knew it was Lyme. I think everybody just wanted answers.
Mm.
So being on the wrong medication put me back so many years, and I think it can make you worse if you're on medications that like aren't, I don't know, like
Yeah, well, they
have.
give mental side effects. So if you're on the one and it's not even treating the mental health issue you have, then you start experiencing the mental health side effects of the one they think they're treating, and it's like this very confusing thing.
Yeah, medications they work great, but the wrong ones can be like they can be really affect you. So it's important that you have a good doctor, a doctor that is not. I think it's very important to have a psychiatrist that is knowledgeable in Lyme disease and infectious disease and how it relates to mental health. Very important. My first psychiatrist actually had Lyme disease.
Oh.
But he disappeared out of nowhere, so that kind of wasn't great. But afterwards it was just downhill from there.
Yeah, of course that happens. That's how life works. Apparently, is something comes that seems like it's gonna work, and then something happens. So I mean, it sounds like you started hitting more of the highs and lows after you were consistently low. So what was the difference kind of between the highs and lows, and how was it so kind of up and down? Was it more, did you ever hit a middle or anything?
It wasn't really a middle.
Yeah.
It was just like, and this is why they thought I was bipolar, because my highs were like so high. I felt like I was great. I could do anything. I wanted to do everything. Like I made myself work when I was like in remission, when I was better with Lyme. I made myself like work like 60 hours a week. I was like going crazy, like not taking care of my body because I was doing everything in the world. And then like a couple of weeks later, I was so low that I'm like, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do anything. I'm depressed. I'd go to the doctor. They'd do something with my meds.
Yeah.
But for me, it was very extreme. And I think that's why they thought I had bipolar. But for me, it's just like my meds were literally causing me to go crazy. So it's very typical though. Like mental health after Lyme, it's not a very typical story though, because the medications played a factor in it.
Yeah, but I'm sure there are other people that have definitely dealt with the same thing. Yeah. Just because there's so many issues like that happen and come up, unfortunately. And it's difficult to work through. I hit my foot, sorry. But the highs and lows, so like when you were low of the highs and lows, was it as low as before, like when you were consistently low, or was it a little above?
It wasn't as low. I mean, there
was it just like you couldn't get up and couldn't do anything?
Yeah, it wasn't as low before because I knew that there was hope at least, and I didn't have Lyme anymore.
Yeah.
Hold on. I think I lost connection.
I can hear you, but it definitely did freeze.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you, but it froze. Okay, we're back now.
Oh, better.
Yep, so we're good.
Okay.
So you can start from the top, I guess.
Okay, so the lows were not as low as before because at least I knew I was out of the line and that there was hope. But they were still low in the sense that I continued over the years to still have to be hospitalized.
Yeah.
So I did still experience like suicidal thoughts, suicidal actions, but they weren't as low before where I literally felt like my head was spinning and I was going crazy and that everything was doom.
Yeah. So since you were still kind of hitting like the suicidal thoughts and things like that, but you have that hope now, which you didn't have before, right? Oh, it's better now.
Wait.
You hear me?
There we go. Oh my gosh. I'm like, oh my gosh. Wait. It keeps cutting out.
Okay. I mean, it's back now.
All right.
Okay, so since you were experiencing still like suicidal thoughts, things like that. But it was different because now you had the hope and before you didn't. So how were you able to pull yourself out of those like lows, or how did you like talk to yourself almost like work through any of that differently from last time?
Yeah, so the first thing I always did and usually do is go to my doctor, say, hey, I'm feeling this way. If they think it's serious enough, I would go to the hospital. If they think, okay, you can get through this, then they would look at my medication, change my medication. Another thing I did was I did therapy for literally 8 years. So on and off. So I would see my therapist, talk it out, use the tools that the therapist would give me.
Yeah.
And then I was usually eventually able to pull myself out of it. And then even faster if I went to the hospital because I would be scared to death to go back. So like,
those places are a little traumatizing. That will do it to you. That will convince you to not want to go back. That is
you get there and you're like, oh, I'm better now. I don't want to hurt myself.
Yeah, it's like bye. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna be fine. Let me go, please. That's kind of what it's like there. Those places are terrible. How did you so there's a lot of controversial opinions with therapy. So how did you like it and how did it help you? Because I know a lot of people, some people don't, some people are unsure, like they won't try it yet, and then some people love it.
Yeah. As far as therapy, I mean, when I first went into it, I didn't really have much of a choice. My parents put me in there. It was very beneficial. And if I had a therapist I didn't like, it was very difficult. And also, I was younger. I didn't really get a choice. And I had a hard time expressing if I didn't want to see a doctor. I thought I was stuck with them.
Yeah.
So it was hard when me and the doctor didn't understand, or they continued to call it Lyme's disease instead of me correcting them like a million times, like Lyme. And then I was like, okay, you have no respect. I'm trying to tell you about my condition. So things like that kind of put a distance between me and a therapist. But when they were good, it was pretty good. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, so CBT. I did EMDR, something about eye movements for PTSD. It was interesting. But it worked. It helped. And then by far the most helpful for me was DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. It's just a little bit more intense.
Yeah. What's it kind of like? Like, what do they do?
So with DBT, generally you do individual, but they also make you go in groups too. So I've had inpatient, outpatient DBT, and it's usually long term. It's not like cognitive behavioral where you can just kind of go whenever. DBT is very structured, and they usually have a course outline where you do mindfulness, and then you do emotional regulation, and then or like preventative things. It's a lot,
Yeah.
but it gives you better tools. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I kind of stopped like after 8 years. Last year was actually the year that I stopped going to therapy because I had a pretty rough experience, and I'm
Oh,
like, screw all this, I'm done. Like, I've been doing it for 8 years, and I'm just like, whatever, you know. I I did not trust therapists again after that, so I can understand now why there are certain people who have a bad experience and they're like,
yeah.
no therapy. And I always had like weird experiences, not great, but this one
Yeah.
was so bad where it just really left a bad taste in my mouth. So I can
Yeah.
completely understand why people would feel that way. But what I can say is it's beneficial, even if you don't learn skills, to just like talk it out with somebody sometimes. But
Yeah.
it's a trial and error.
Yeah, I agree. It's crazy because it's so different for everyone. And like you said, like bad experiences like that. I had one too, and I didn't do it for years, and now I'm back in it to try again. So it's like it's so different and it's so hard, and it's not going to be perfect right away. It's like trying medicine. You got to try a bunch of different ones
Exactly.
till you find a fit. So, did you ever find someone that seemed like a fit for a while?
Yes. The problem was I moved so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have a therapist that I liked, but I switched therapists like I'd say every 2 years, which was not ideal for me. I'm sorry, my dog
Yeah.
is snoring.
No, it's okay. My dog was messing with things earlier, so
Um, but I just moved so much that like I didn't like it. I wish I could have stayed with a therapist for longer,
yeah,
but I've had a couple that I've liked.
that's good. So hopefully, maybe some people will want to give it a try because I know a lot of people are very unsure and have heard so many different things. So, I
Yeah,
mean, might be worth a shot for some.
I think
But
so.
yeah, is there? I think we've talked about a lot of really good things. I really like this conversation a lot, actually. And I love how open you are because I think a lot of people are going to be able to watch and relate and be like, wow, I'm not the only one dealing with all that. Um, so I really do love how open you have been for this time we have been on here. And I guess to kind of end, maybe, is there anything else you want to touch on or
Mm,
say or whatever?
um, I guess what I would want to say is that I know that everybody has like different experiences, and but for the most part, people at one point or another with Lyme like struggle with their mental health, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it can be so difficult and it's very hard. I think one of the most important things for mental health is to surround yourself with people who actually have Lyme. I think it's so important to, like, people say have a support system, but when you have Lyme, it is such a crazy thing to deal with that, like, even your friends and family, they don't get it unless they have Lyme. They don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so important to me to be with people who had Lyme disease, and that's why I went online and I'm like I swear that's what got me through some of my hardest times was having
Yeah,
a support system in that way. I
I
think it's
can
very important.
completely agree because it's like they get it. And like you said, they don't have it, they don't get it. And it's just not going to be the same. So I completely agree with that. Um, well, I think that's really important. And thank you again for how open you were because I seriously have said this 5 times in the past 30 seconds, but I really love this conversation and everything you shared. So I think it's all really, really important.
Yeah,
Um,
any way to help people. I don't care. Any way to help people. I'm like literally an open book.
and I love it. So, I mean, I'll put your Instagram in the description. So if anyone has any other questions for you, they can maybe reach out and you can answer some. So I'm sure people will really like this one. So thank you again. And I guess I will end this recording now.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.